My name is Caitlin Foster, and at 31, I thought I knew my family's playbook. But that night at our Portland dinner table, my parents blindsided me. Your brother's wedding needs to be perfect, Mom declared, her tone final like she was closing a deal. We're using your college fund. My stomach dropped. $75,000 money I hadn't touched in years was theirs to spend. I forced a tight smile, my pulse racing, and said, I want him to be happy too. But inside, I was fuming. They didn't know I'd graduated college debt-free, built my own path, and didn't need their so-called support. They saw me as the kid who'd just go along. Then my phone lit up a voicemail from the wedding venue, some fancy hotel in downtown Portland. Your deposit check bounced. The manager said, voice sharp. Payments due tomorrow or the booking's gone. I stared across the table at my parents, their laughter grating, clueless that they'd already dipped into my money. They had no idea what I was holding back. If you've ever been steamrolled by family, smash that like button, subscribe, and tell me your story in the comments. Growing up in a Portland suburb, I learned early that my family's attention gravitated toward my brother, Derek Foster. In our modest two-story home, I was the quiet kid hunched over a clunky desktop teaching myself to code at 13. My parents, Linda Foster and Thomas Foster, barely noticed their focus on Derek's charm and big plans. Caitlin, don't waste time on that computer, Mom would say, her voice sharp, urging me to join the family's chatter. I kept at it, driven not by their approval, but by a spark I couldn't ignore. School became my refuge, where I dove into math and computer science, my straight A's, and competition wins stacking up unnoticed at home. At 15, I built my first app, a quiz tool for students cramming for exams. I uploaded it to a free platform expecting nothing. Then checks arrived, $50, then $100. By year's end, I'd earned $5,000. Excited, I showed Mom a printout of my earnings. She glanced at it, shrugged, and said, That's nice, Caitlin, but help your brother with his homework. Derek, 3 years older, was coasting through community college applications. I bit my tongue, stashing the money in a secret savings account. That app wasn't just code, it was my first taste of independence. By 17, I was ready to push further. High school's computer lab became my second home, where I worked on a new project, a platform connecting students with online tutors. Late nights sketching designs and testing code paid off when a Portland tutoring chain tested it. We want to integrate this. Their manager emailed offering a licensing deal for $50,000. I signed, hands shaking, and deposited the money into my private account. My parents thought I was just a studious kid, unaware of the contracts piling up. I let them believe it, knowing they'd see my success as a resource for Derek's endless needs. College was my next step. My grades and coding portfolio earned a partial scholarship to the University of Washington, covering half my tuition. The rest came from my app earnings, no family fund needed. Mom called once asking about my scholarship life. It's fine, I said, dodging details. She didn't press, assuming I was scraping by. In my freshman dorm, I saw a chance to scale my tutoring platform, now called Learn Easy. Between classes and all-nighters, I added features like live chat and progress tracking. At a Seattle tech meetup, I pitched to a room of strangers, my voice steady, despite nerves. A local investor pulled me aside. This could be big, she said, offering to buy a 10% stake. I incorporated Learn Easy and sold it for $100,000, funding a part-time coder and a shared office near campus. Hiding my success was deliberate. I'd seen how my parents funneled money to Derek new gadgets, car payments, while I worked alone. Once Derek showed up at my dorm leaning on his new car, asking for gas money. I'm broke. I lied, keeping my bank balance locked away. He shrugged, saying, Mom'll handle it, and drove off. I didn't care about their assumptions. I cared about protecting what I'd built. My professors saw my drive. Dr. Chen, a computer science mentor, recommended me for a campus startup incubator. You're ahead of the curve, he said. I got in, gaining mentors and access to tech events. By my second semester, LearnEasy had 12,000 users, mostly high schoolers and freshmen. I hired a classmate for user support, freeing me to code. Keeping my double life quiet was about control. At a family barbecue, I overheard Mom praising Derek's latest job while I flipped burgers. I almost mentioned Learn Easy but stopped when Dad shifted the topic to Derek's deals. I stayed silent, my resolve firming. They didn't need to know. My scholarship story held up, letting me work in peace. By 19, Learn Easy was a steady machine. I opened a business account, hired a bookkeeper for taxes, and kept my savings separate. Every new user, every contract was a step toward a future my family couldn't touch. I wasn't just building a company, I was building my freedom. My first year at the University of Washington was a whirlwind, but by my junior year, Learn Easy was no longer a dorm room project. I was 20, juggling classes and a growing user base, thousands of students using my tutoring platform daily. I hired 2 more coders and a designer, all part-time, to keep up with demand. A Seattle-based edtech company took notice. They invited me to their sleek office downtown, all glass and open desks. "Your platform's impressive," their CEO said, leaning forward. "We want to acquire a stake." After weeks of negotiations, I sold 15% of Learn Easy for $300,000. That deal pushed my savings into the millions, a number I could barely process. I moved the funds to a secure investment account far from anyone's reach. With college behind me, I set my sights higher. My professors had always pushed me toward grad school, and Stanford's MBA program was the dream. I applied, leveraging my startup's success and a near-perfect GPA. When the acceptance email arrived, I sat in my tiny apartment staring at the screen, a mix of pride and disbelief washing over me. The tuition was steep, tens of thousands a year, but I covered it with my own money. No loans, no family fund. Mom called the day I moved to California. "Stanford's expensive, Caitlin," she said, her voice tinged with worry. "Are you sure about this?" I nodded into the phone, muttering about scholarships. She didn't know my net worth was now $6 million, and I wasn't about to tell her. At a tech conference in San Francisco, I met Justin Perry. He was 22, sharp, working on his own edtech startup. We bonded over late-night coffee, debating user interfaces and market trends. "You're killing it with Learn Easy," he said, his eyes bright with respect. I hesitated, then shared the truth. My sales, my investments, the millions I'd stashed away. Justin didn't flinch. "You built that from nothing," he said, grinning. "Own it." For the first time, I felt seen, not as a student or a sister, but as a founder. We started dating, and I let him in on my secret, knowing he'd keep it. Justin became my sounding board, challenging my ideas, celebrating my wins. Back home, my family had no clue. Derek Foster dropped by during a visit to Portland, sprawling on my old couch like he owned it. "Heard you're at Stanford," he said, smirking. "Bet that's costing Mom and Dad a fortune." I shrugged, letting him assume I was drowning in debt. He didn't need to know I'd paid cash for my tuition, my apartment, everything. Mom and Dad were the same. At a family dinner, Dad asked how I was getting by in California. "Fine," I said, steering the conversation away. They still thought my college fund was my lifeline, that I was scraping through grad school on their dime. I let them believe it, remembering the times they'd bailed Derek out, car payments, rent, even a new TV when his broke. Stanford was intense. The MBA program threw me into case studies, pitches, and late-night strategy sessions. I thrived, using Learn Easy as my real-world lab. I expanded the platform, adding AI-driven study plans and partnering with schools across California. By my second year, Learn Easy had 50,000 users and a small but loyal team. I hired a CFO, a sharp woman from my cohort, to manage the growing finances. Every deal, every new feature added to my wealth, but I kept it locked down. Justin was the only one who knew the full scope. "You're building an empire," he'd say, half joking, as we brainstormed over takeout. Hiding my success wasn't just about privacy, it was survival. I'd seen how Mom and Dad funneled money to Derek, no questions asked. Once at a holiday gathering, Mom pulled me aside. "Can you help Dare with his rent?" she whispered, glancing at him, laughing with cousins. I shook my head, citing grad school expenses I didn't have. Her frown deepened, but she dropped it. Derek never paid his own way new clothes, new trips always on their tab. I wasn't going to let my work bankroll his life. By 25, I was a Stanford grad with a thriving startup and a fortune I'd built myself. My parents still called asking about scholarship checks or part-time jobs. I'd smile through the phone giving vague answers. They didn't know I'd never touched their fund, that I didn't need it. I was free, but the weight of their assumptions lingered. I wasn't ready for what came next. Returning to Portland for a rare family dinner, I stepped into my parents' house, the familiar scent of roast chicken hitting me. The dining room table was set, candles flickering, but the warmth felt hollow. Mom Linda Foster bustled in the kitchen, calling out to Dad Thomas Foster to grab more wine. Derek Foster. My brother lounged at the table, scrolling his phone, his fiancée Melissa Carter beside him, chatting about wedding flowers. I forced a smile, my stomach already twisting. I'd built a $6 million empire with Learn Easy, but my family still saw me as the kid scraping by. Tonight, I'd learn how far their assumptions went. We sat down, plates piled high. Mom started, her voice bright but firm. "Caitlin, we need to talk about Derek's wedding. It's a big moment for the family." I nodded, waiting. She continued. "The venue's expensive, but we're using your college fund to cover it. You're okay with that, right?" My fork froze midair. The room seemed to shrink, their faces blurring as my pulse spiked. "My college fund?" I asked, voice low, hoping I'd misheard. Dad nodded, casual, like it was no big deal. "It's just sitting there, Caitlin. Derek needs it more." I set my fork down, hands trembling under the table. "How much are we talking?" I pressed, keeping my tone even. Mom glanced at Derek, then back at me. "15,000 for the deposit. It's a top-tier hotel in Portland." My mind raced. That fund, $75,000, was mine, untouched since high school. I'd paid for college, Stanford, everything without it. They didn't know that, but they also didn't ask. "You already took money from it," I said, my voice sharper now. 25,000 2 years ago. For an SUV and Kyle Ramsey's debts. The table went silent. Derek's phone clattered onto his plate. Melissa looked confused, her eyes darting to him. Mom's smile faltered, but she recovered fast. "Caitlin, that was for family needs. Derek's job required a reliable car, and Kyle's like a son to us." Dad stayed quiet, cutting into his chicken, avoiding my gaze. Derek leaned forward, his tone defensive. "Come on, sis, it's not like you were using it. You're at Stanford, right? Scholarships and all that." His smirk made my blood boil. He knew exactly what he'd done. I took a breath, steadying myself. "I paid for Stanford myself, Derek. Every cent. That fund was mine, and you took it without asking." Mom jumped in, her voice sharp. "It's family money, Caitlin. We made a decision for everyone's good. Everyone's good." I almost laughed. They'd funneled cash to Derek for years. Cars, trips, now a wedding, while I built my life alone. Melissa shifted uncomfortably, whispering to Derek. "What's she talking about?" He brushed her off, muttering, "She's overreacting." I turned to Dad, hoping for something, anything. "You signed off on this, didn't you?" He sighed, his eyes tired. "We thought it was fair, Caitlin. Derek's starting a family." Fair. The word stung. I'd been invisible my whole life, my work dismissed while Derek got a free pass. "You didn't tell me," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You assumed I'd just take it." Mom waved a hand, dismissive. "Let's not ruin dinner. We'll sort it out later." Later wasn't good enough. I pushed my plate away, the food untouched. I checked the account, I said, locking eyes with Mom. 25,000 gone. 10 for Derek's SUV, 15 for Kyle's debts. You all knew. Derek scoffed, but his face paled. "That's old news, sis. Why bring it up now?" I ignored him, turning to the table. "I'm not paying for your wedding, Derek. Not with my money." Melissa gasped softly, her hands twisting in her lap. Mom snapped, "Caitlin, stop this. We're a family. Family." They'd betrayed me, plain and simple. I stood my chair, scraping the floor. I'm done letting you decide what's mine. Justin Perry's words echoed in my head. Call it out. I wasn't the quiet kid anymore, swallowing their choices. I'd built Learn Easy, a multi-million-dollar company, without their help. They didn't know that yet, but they would. A family reunion was coming up, a chance to lay it all bare before everyone. I wasn't after apologies, I wanted the truth out. At a family reunion in Portland a few weeks later, the backyard hummed with laughter, picnic tables overflowing with casseroles and pies. I stood by a folding chair, gripping a water bottle, my nerves taut but focused. The dinner weeks earlier, where Mom and Dad casually announced they'd use my college fund for Derek's wedding, had lit a fire in me. I'd checked the account, confirmed they'd already taken $25,000 for Derek's SUV and Kyle's debts, and I wasn't letting it pass. Justin Perry had pushed me to confront them, and this was the moment before every relative, no secrets spared. I stepped to the center of the yard, my voice cutting through the chatter. I need everyone's attention. Conversation stopped, eyes turning to me. Mom Linda Foster froze mid-bite, her fork hovering. Dad Thomas Foster leaned forward, brow furrowed. Derek Foster. My brother was joking with Kyle Ramsey near the dessert table, oblivious. Melissa Carter, his fiancée, stood nearby arranging flowers. I took a steady breath. You all think I needed that college fund to survive. You're wrong. I built Learn Easy, my own company. It's worth millions. My net worth is $6 million. Aunts gasped. Uncles whispered. A glass tipped over, splashing lemonade. I faced Mom and Dad. That fund was mine. I never used it, paid for college, Stanford, everything myself. But you took $25,000 without asking. 10 for Derek's car, 15 for Kyle's debts. My words were calm, deliberate, each one landing hard. Mom's face reddened. Caitlin not here, she snapped, glancing at the crowd. Dad shifted his eyes on the grass, silent as always. Derek's laugh dyed his jaw tight. Kyle shuffled, avoiding my stare. Derek spoke up, his voice sharp. Sis, chill. The car was for work, and Kyle was in a bind. Family steps up. Kyle nodded quickly. It was just once, Caitlin. No harm done. I fixed them with a look. No harm. You took my money, Dare, and lied about it. The relatives murmured, some nodding, others wide-eyed. Melissa looked at Derek, confused, but stayed quiet. Mom stood, her hands clenched. Caitlin, you're embarrassing us. We used that money for the family's good. Derek's building a life. Her tone was defensive, unyielding. I shook my head. You didn't ask me, Mom. You decided my money was Derek's to spend. I'm done with that. Freeze the account, no more withdrawals. My voice was firm, unwavering, carrying across the yard. Dad finally spoke, his voice soft. We didn't want to upset you, Caitlin. His guilt was clear, but he didn't push back against Mom. I turned to the crowd. I built my life without their help. I don't need that fund, and they don't get to touch it. A cousin clapped, others joined their support, unexpected. Derek muttered to Kyle. She's blowing this out of proportion. Kyle shrugged, his face pale. Melissa tugged Derek's arm, whispering something, but he brushed her off. Mom's eyes narrowed. You're being selfish, Caitlin. We've always looked out for you. Looked out for me. They'd ignored my apps, my awards, while propping up Derek's endless wants. I didn't argue, she wouldn't hear it. The reunion grew tense. Relatives exchanging glances. Kyle slipped toward the gate. Derek trailing him, throwing me a scowl. You didn't have to do this, he hissed. I met his gaze. You didn't have to take what's mine, Dare. Nothing resolved that day. No apologies came. Mom stood firm. Dad stayed quiet. Derek and Kyle deflected. But I'd spoken my truth, and the family knew it. I wasn't their invisible daughter anymore. I'd drawn a boundary, and I'd hold it. In the weeks after the reunion, the consequences unfolded quietly but sharply. Derek Foster and his fiancée, Melissa Carter, faced the fallout of their wedding plans collapsing. The Portland hotel, unwilling to wait after the bounced $15,000 deposit, canceled their booking. A cousin told me they settled for a small ceremony at a local church, with folding chairs and a potluck reception. Melissa wore a modest gown, the guest list cut to 40. Derek called me once, his tone bitter. "You could have stepped up, sis," he said, pinning their scaled-back day on me. I ended the call without responding. His choices weren't my burden. Mom and Dad Linda and Thomas Foster hit a wall. With my college fund now off limits, I'd had the bank freeze it. They dipped into their retirement savings to cover Derek's wedding and some of his overdue bills. An aunt mentioned they'd pulled out a hefty sum, but it wasn't enough. Their mortgage payments slipped, and Mom's usual upbeat chatter turned tense. "We're fine," she told a neighbor, but her voice betrayed worry. They'd always bankrolled Derek new gadgets trips that SUV, but their safety net was unraveling. Dad's silence on our last call spoke volumes. He knew they'd overstepped, but he didn't reach out. I made a hard choice. I stopped taking their calls. Mom left voicemails, her tone shifting from soft to sharp. "Caitlin, we're still family. Call us." I didn't. Derek texted first casual, then pushy. "Don't shut us out, sis." I blocked him. Kyle Ramsey sent a vague email about clearing the air over the fund. I trashed it unread. Justin Perry, my anchor, backed me up. "You've carried them long enough," he said over dinner, his eyes steady. I nodded, the weight of their expectations lifting. San Francisco became my reset. I'd landed a lead strategist role at a rising edtech firm drawn to their mission and my success with LearnEasy. I signed a lease on a bright apartment in the Mission District, its windows framing the city's glow. The move was a clean break, leaving behind the Portland house where I'd faced their betrayal over dinner. My new office pulsed with ideas, my team eager to build. For the first time, I felt free, my work valued by people who saw me. I kept my move quiet. My family thought I was still in Portland, maybe stewing over the reunion. A relative called curious. $6 million, Caitlin, for real?" she asked, half amazed. I confirmed it, keeping details tight. Word spread among cousins, but Mom and Dad stayed silent, clinging to their story that I needed their help. I let them believe it. My reality, my company, my accounts was mine alone. The distance sharpened my focus. In San Francisco, I dove into work. My team launched a new feature for the edtech firm, boosting engagement by 15%. LearnEasy expanded, hiring 3 new developers to target new regions. Justin visited often, his startup growing nearby. We'd walk along the bay, tossing ideas back and forth, my past fading. I wasn't escaping my family, I was building beyond them. One night, a letter arrived, forwarded from Portland. Mom's handwriting, neat and careful. "We need you, Caitlin," it read. "Derek's trying harder now. No mention of the fund, no regret for their choices." I left it on my counter untouched, then tossed it. I didn't need their words to move forward. My life was mine, built from my own grit. Walking away from my family was the hardest choice, but it brought me clarity. In San Francisco, I carved out a life that was wholly mine. My days buzzed with strategy sessions at the ed tech firm, shaping tools that reached thousands. LearnEasy thrived now with a team of 25 breaking into new markets. My apartment perched above the city's lights was a sanctuary for reflection. I wasn't hiding from my past, I was owning my future. I thought back on my family's choices. Mom Linda Foster and Dad Thomas Foster always put Derek first. His cars, his debts, his wedding. They took my college fund, assuming I'd stay quiet. Derek leaned on their support, never questioning, while Kyle Ramsey tagged along, benefiting from their favoritism. Melissa Carter, tied to Derek's choices, faced a simpler life than they'd planned. Their decisions left them struggling, retirement funds, drained, bills piling up. I didn't wish them pain, but I couldn't fix their mistakes. Letting go wasn't easy. I missed the idea of family shared meals, old traditions. But I'd been invisible too long, my work ignored, while Derek's half-efforts were praised. Justin Perry saw me clearly. "You're unstoppable, Caitlin," he'd say, smiling over coffee. He was right. Every milestone, learn easy Stanford, my fortune was mine built without their help. Cutting them off freed me to focus on what I valued. The lesson hit hard: self-reliance is strength. Setting boundaries wasn't betrayal, it was protection. I learned to guard my worth, to walk away from those who took without giving back. My family's favoritism taught me that enabling dependency only deepens it. Derek and my parents learned accountability the hard way, forced to face their choices when the money stopped flowing. This isn't just my story, it's for anyone who's felt unseen. Family can lift you up or hold you back. If you're giving everything to those who don't see you, pause. Build your own path. Set your limits. My family's bias pushed me to prove them wrong, but my success came from proving myself right. That's the truth I hold, and I hope it resonates with you.